This house has no paint, no siding, no wallpaper, plaster, or exterior cladding. On paper, it is a building stripped of every decorative finish, a raw concrete structure left completely exposed to the elements. And yet, keeping a home like this looking pristine can cost vastly more than maintaining a house covered in traditional finishes. To understand why, you have to look past the modern aesthetic and examine a fundamental paradox. Conventional homes use surface layers to hide the mess of construction. Paint covers drywall mud, stone veneer masks structural concrete, siding conceals joints, flashing, and small alignment errors. Exposed concrete gives you nowhere to hide. When the structural material is the final finish, every discoloration, form tie mark, hairline crack, and water stain becomes a permanent part of the architecture. Today, we are investigating why a material that appears unfinished demands such extraordinary precision, and why preserving that raw beauty over time becomes a relentless technical battle. Walk up to a high-end architectural concrete residence, and the visual impression is one of striking, monolithic calm. You see vast, uninterrupted plains of board-formed concrete. Deep, shadow-casting reveals. Crisp, razor-sharp edges where walls meet glass. Ceilings that transition seamlessly into exterior soffits without a single trim piece or molding to break the line. The visual appeal lies in its apparent honesty. There is a sense of permanent weight, texture, and visual simplicity that painted surfaces simply cannot replicate. But that simplicity is an optical illusion created by extreme restraint. In a traditional home, if a worker slightly nicks a corner during construction, a painter fills it with spackle and paints over it. If a wall settles slightly out of plumb, trim hides the gap. In exposed concrete, the poured surface is the final room. A poorly positioned formwork seam isn't a temporary construction detail. It is an architectural feature you will stare at for the next 50 years. A patch made with slightly mismatched cement doesn't disappear. It stands out like a dark stain against a clean canvas. By stripping away the protective and decorative layers, the architect creates an unforgiving environment where visual perfection must be achieved on the very first try. And that reality completely changes what must happen during construction. Making raw concrete look naturally effortless requires a level of process control that standard structural engineering rarely demands. In ordinary construction, concrete is poured behind formwork with a primary focus on load capacity. Honeycombing, minor air voids, and shifting formwork panels are common, but they don't matter structurally because drywall or cladding will eventually cover them. For architectural exposed concrete, the construction process is the design. Achieving a flawless surface requires rigorous precision before a single batch of concrete arrives on site. The plywood or steel formwork must be engineered with strict stiffness limits to prevent bowing under the immense fluid pressure of wet concrete. Form tie holes must be laid out in a precise, symmetrical grid because those small circular indentations will remain permanently visible on the facade. Even the steel reinforcement cage inside the wall takes on visual importance. If reinforcement is positioned too close to the formwork, insufficient concrete cover can increase the risk of visible reinforcement-related staining or surface effects, while also reducing long-term durability. The pour itself becomes a high-stakes event. The concrete mix design must be precisely calibrated for color consistency, slump, and aggregate distribution. The crew must vibrate the wet concrete just enough to release trapped air bubbles without causing the heavy aggregates to settle to the bottom. If a single cold joint forms because one truck is delayed in traffic, a dark horizontal line is permanently frozen into the wall. The engineering isn't just holding the building up, it is managing a fluid material to create a flawless monolithic sculpture. Once that smooth concrete wall is exposed to the environment, a new set of physical challenges begins. Because concrete looks like solid stone, it is easy to assume it is completely impervious to the weather. In reality, concrete is a porous, dynamic material, a hard sponge that constantly interacts with moisture, temperature, and atmospheric chemistry. Water is the primary enemy of architectural concrete. Unsealed or improperly detailed concrete absorbs rainwater through capillary action. In freeze-thaw climates, repeated saturation and freezing can create internal pressures within the concrete, eventually contributing to cracking and surface spalling that ruins the smooth finish. Furthermore, as moisture moves through the concrete, dissolved compounds can migrate toward the surface and leave behind white, chalky deposits commonly associated with efflorescence. Then there is the issue of thermal performance. A thick concrete wall has substantial thermal mass, But without an appropriate insulation strategy, it can still conduct heat through the enclosure and contribute to unwanted heat transfer. Insulating exposed concrete requires sophisticated assembly strategies. Depending on the climate, builders must either sandwich rigid insulation between two separate concrete pours, creating an insulated sandwich wall, or detail an interior stud wall while managing potential condensation risks at the concrete boundary. Add to that rain runoff, atmospheric pollution, UV exposure, and biological growth in damp shadow lines, and the raw facade faces constant environmental degradation. Which brings us to the financial reality of fixing mistakes. In standard residential construction, fixing a damaged or imperfect wall is straightforward. You sand it, patch it, and repaint it. In exposed concrete, there is no paint. A single mistake during the pour or a deep stain during construction triggers an extraordinarily complex remediation process. Consider what happens when a 20-foot feature wall develops a prominent patch of honeycombing, an area where wet concrete failed to flow around dense steel rebar, leaving a coarse, gravelly pocket on the surface. You cannot simply slap mortar over the hole. Standard mortar has a different texture, absorption rate, and color than the surrounding pour. Once it dries, the patch will look like a bright gray bandage on a dark gray wall, turning a luxury feature into a visible flaw. Remediating architectural concrete requires specialist artisans. They must carefully chip back the damaged area, mix custom polymer-modified cements color-matched to the specific batch, replicate the exact texture of the surrounding wood grain or smooth formliner, and hand-blend the edges. Before construction even begins, contractors often build full-scale mock-ups just to test formwork releases, vibration techniques, and repair formulas. The concrete itself is only part of the cost. You are paying for prototype testing, specialized formwork carpentry, controlled mix design, chemical admixtures, and the rare skilled labor required to achieve perfection when you only get one chance. So, what happens 10, 20, or 30 years down the road? A properly designed exposed concrete home can age with incredible grace. Over time, the material develops a rich patina, showing subtle tonal variations that reflect its interaction with the local climate and surrounding landscape. Controlled weathering can be visually stunning. Uncontrolled deterioration is a disaster. Maintaining an exposed concrete home isn't about scrubbing it until it looks like it was poured yesterday. It is about actively managing its interaction with water and time. Silane and siloxane penetrants must be reapplied periodically to reduce water absorption while allowing the wall to breathe. Elastomeric joint sealants around window frames and expansion joints must be inspected and replaced before they fail and allow water to migrate behind the facade. Rain gutters and concealed drip edges must be kept clear to prevent dark, dirty water streaks from running down primary feature walls. Serviceability must be built into the architectural design. If a concealed drainage line behind a concrete wall clogs, or if a structural joint requires inspection, there must be discrete access points. You cannot simply cut a hole in an architectural concrete wall to fix a leaking pipe without permanently altering the building's aesthetic. The irony is that exposed concrete was never truly about doing less. It was about leaving more visible. And once the structure itself becomes the finish, keeping that finish beautiful means managing everything that can change it, from water and temperature to time itself. That's why an exposed concrete home can be so expensive to keep beautiful, because there is nowhere for imperfection to hide. If you enjoyed this material science deep dive, leave a like and subscribe for more architectural and engineering investigations. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next project.